Welcome to another episode of basically our webinars on Thursdays. This is about expressing neurodiversity, art therapy, and emotional well-being. We have the lovely Rachel Oxborough with us today, and we are going to be talking about art therapy. We do these webinars for free, and I really appreciate all of you coming and sharing as well, because it really helps the organization, this mission. But when you think about expressing yourself creatively, what one word comes to mind? So far, we have writing, poetry.
Well, that's really interesting, isn't it?
Somebody in the comments, Lorraine said neither, nothing. We have flow, we have colour, we have elaboration. Can you all see how different creatively words come up for just one word? We want to get very clear on the language today because everyone defines things differently. I'm going to introduce Rachel. Do stay tuned because this is going to be a great session. We've got fun. I love that. Energy, emotional hygiene. That's an interesting one. Fantastic. Thank you for those 12 people that have shared.
Yeah, amazing things in there.
Another question. Which of these is true about art therapy and neurodiversity? Is it art therapy requires artistic skills or talent? Art therapy can help process emotions that are hard to put into words. You need an official diagnosis to benefit from art therapy. Which one is it? Let us know where you are from as well. It's nice to know that we are international. Hey, from Bangladesh. Okay, so while we have the answer, Rachel, did you want to expand on that?
Yeah, about art therapy can help us process emotions that are hard to put into words. Oh, that's 100% what art therapy is. So you do lots of different things. You need an official diagnosis. No, you don't. Art therapy requires artistic skill. Absolutely not. 15 people have got the right answer. So I'm very impressed already. Although it's not about being right or wrong. I want to just put that out there because we're all able to make mistakes and that's a healthy thing to do as well. There's no fear or judgment.
Here, let me just go to this one. Just to give you all that definition piece. Psychotherapy uses visual and tactile media as a means of self-expression, right? And communication. Normally, when we talk about art therapy, sometimes we see lots of pictures of children and that there's a piece here of adults. When you've got complex and confusing feelings and you want to foster self-awareness and growth, art therapy is the place for that. Somebody said, I'm autistic and I had art therapy when I was a child. This is one reason I'm joining today's session, as well as to learn more about therapy. Fantastic.
So I'm autistic and I had art therapy when I was a child. This is one reason I'm joining today's session, as I'm about to learn more about therapy. That's interesting that you've had art therapy already, and I'm wondering what kind of experience that was for you. I think art therapy can take many different forms because art therapists, they do work within a model, but they all have their own style as well. Some of us may be more client-led and some of us may lean more into sort of directing the client. For somebody with autism, again, it depends on how their traits manifest themselves. But art therapy is all about working with the client and finding out their language, which could be metaphor, it could be storytelling, it could be play, it could be drawing with felt tips, it could be getting really messy with the paints. But with neurodiversity, there's a lot of difference in materials and how they affect us because it's all about sensitivity and texture. And that's something a good art therapist would be very aware about. Yes, so in terms of autism, if you've already had art therapy, the next art therapist you work with might be different in their approach. One art therapist might do things differently to the next one, but the key element would be the art materials and the options to play and have different experiences, really. But yeah, quite diverse.
Fantastic. We've got another question. And while you are answering that one, I want to say howdy to people from different parts of the world: Southeast London, Canada, Geneva, New York City, North London. Thank you all for joining. I wanted to also share this. I was offered drama therapy years ago, but decided to take part in NHS-IAPT, which I regret now. So interesting.
Oh, well, I think that's really hard, isn't it, when we take a decision? Sometimes it's not about it being a mistake. Sometimes it's just about a different journey, isn't it? Whatever path you choose to take, I often think there's something we learn from it. Obviously, I'm an advocate for the creative therapies. This is just my personal opinion. A much more extensive way for us to get a range of expression rather than talking therapies. But talking therapies can be really helpful for people as well. It just depends where you are and what you want to achieve. But yes, I personally think if you're offered creative therapies, then snatch their hands off because they're quite hard to get hold of. I hope that answers the question. Is there another question?
The question is, what does emotional well-being mean to you as a neurodivergent person? While you answer that, I'm going to put a few comments from the chat on the screen so that Rachel can have a look.
I'm also super wordy and I get writing and words within artwork wherever I can. Oh, I'm that type of artist as well. I love to use words and collage, and I think words can really work very well with the imagery and symbolism. Words themselves are a form of art, aren't they? Like calligraphy. It's also, what does the word mean? It could be very poignant. One word could say 1,000 things, couldn't it? As well, if it's embedded within an image, that's just powerhouse, isn't it? Regulation of one's nervous system, 100%. That's what we work with. Art materials or creativity, play, whatever form that takes, regulate the nervous system as long as it's done and the person feels safe and it's in line with how they communicate and relate. And that's where a trained therapist who's experienced with this will be able to understand that individual and be able to sense where it's going and when somebody's getting emotionally activated or triggered or it's not going very well. At the same time, we want to really push people a little bit out of their comfort zone because we're teaching them how to self-regulate. If we keep people really comfortable all the time, they're not learning skills and tools of how to move into things that maybe stretch them a little bit out and build their confidence and resilience. But it's all about self-regulation and nervous system work.
Fantastic. The other question I asked about emotional well-being, lots of people mean to you as a neurodivergent person. Lots of people said it helps me feel grounded, in a balance, contentment, feeling to be my authentic self without the judgment. It's a huge one, right? Feeling more organized, being well mentally, understanding myself and what I need to regulate. So amazing. You're going to speak to that a little bit more in terms of emotional well-being because ColourMeIn, it's your organization.
Yeah.
Well-being.
Well-being, yes, it's a big word, well-being, isn't it? It's a bit of a buzzword, and I think it covers a lot of areas. But for me, well-being is about how you manage life. I think it is about mental health. But in ColourMeIn Wellbeing, we've developed a term called PINCH, which stands for purpose, identity, your neurochemistry, your connections, and also your health. I think under the PINCH umbrella, that is how we maintain a good standard of well-being, which is all evidence-based and based on neuroscience and psychology.
Oh, I love that. Tell me what PINCH is again.
PINCH stands for your purpose, your identity, your neurochemistry, how we regulate in your neurochemicals, your connection, what's your community like, what's your network like, who's holding you, who are your friends, who are your family, what's your work colleagues, are they healthy? What about your physical health? Are you exercising, eating well, or have you got some disabilities that you need to really look after yourself with? So it's all about measuring your pinch and making sure that we target the whole thing, because well-being isn't just one thing. It's not have a cake or going for a spa day. It's really quite in-depth and scientific, especially when we look at you as a whole picture, because we're holistic people that need to be embedded in safe communities and really understand what our purpose is. I think in today's society, that's what people are really looking for. What is my purpose and how can I get more connected? Because that underpins brilliant mental health.
Fantastic. Love that.
ColourMeIn Wellbeing is a non-profit organisation. And what that means is any money that we get, our profits go into funding community projects for those that really struggle to access mental health care, whether that's in education, the criminal justice system, or just people in general. I work with large organisation and I develop staff wellbeing products because I believe that art therapy can really support organisations with their staff wellbeing. I don't know if you're aware, we are in a mental health crisis. We have got a huge problem with people out of work due to their mental health. People experience a range of problems like burnout, compassion fatigue, especially if you work in people facing jobs. I've got a team of people that work with me. I've got business psychologists, neurodiversity specialists. We can do assessments. We can do art therapy, creative therapy. I also collaborate with universities such as Edge Hill University and the University of Salford, where we're working with a program called the Arts for the Blues, which is massively evidence-based and run by professors that know exactly what they're doing. We're really trying to get that into the south of England, where it's group therapy interventions. We've got some amazing, innovative programs coming our way. Basically, that's what I do. I build networks with people, organizations. I have a private practice where you can come. This is my art therapy room, where I have a range of equipment, toys, and experiences to explore. You can go on my website to look at that. But that's what I do, really. I'm an art therapist. I'm an entrepreneur. I built an art school which serviced 250 clients per week and was well established within Hertfordshire and North London. But then I sold back to become an art therapist because that took 4 years of training. But I work with a range of people, from people who've been in prison to teachers to psychologists to lawyers. I worked in corporates such as Bupa and Deloitte. So I've got quite a extensive list, but I'm always open to new experiences. And I think that's the beautiful thing about creative therapies. It's just not in one box. We can go into anything and expand that and bring amazing skills and information to people in lots of different contexts.
Amazing. We're going to go through some more questions for the community, and Rachel's going to expand on them as well. Take a look at this. We're about to explore questions about how we communicate and experience emotions. These questions will honor the diverse ways neurodivergent people process and express feelings. But there's no correct neurodivergent experience. You can engage, observe, or step back. All are welcome here. You just want to make sure that the safety button is particularly clicked here. If you need to look away from the screen, still on move, take a moment, skip a question, all completely fine. The first one is, have you struggled to put your feelings into words, especially during moments of overwhelm or shutdown?
Yes, there's a reason why this happens for sure. And I think it leads to a lot of misunderstandings and being misjudged as well. In your brain, you've got different areas. And when we get overwhelmed, certain areas get activated and some areas shut down. And the bits that get activated is your flight, fight, freeze response. Everybody, when they get overwhelmed, has a different response. Some people want to fight. Some people want to run away. Some people freeze and completely like, I can't speak at all now. Some people hide away. That's basically your primitive brain, which is your amygdala, which is trying to keep you safe. It's pumping your body full of adrenaline and cortisol, getting you ready for danger. Sometimes our brains have got confused as to what's dangerous. Years ago, a tiger running after us, you would want your Amy, I call it Amy the amygdala. You'd want Amy the amygdala to go, quick, pump me full of adrenaline so I can run away. I haven't got time to think. My thinking brain's going to shut right down because we are going to run away from the tiger. In today's society, we don't tend to have tigers so much, but we might get overwhelmed with stress, or somebody might say something that upsets us, or we might experience a flashback or a texture, and our brain just goes into overdrive. Instead of it being a dangerous life and death situation, Amy the amygdala has got confused. She shuts down. The cognitive part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that's all gone down, which is the bit you need to process thought and communication. Really why it's difficult to communicate when you're overwhelmed or shut down. Often.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that really insightful piece of information. Mackenzie's asked this question. There is a rationale behind this question. Get a chance to read this.
As far as the evidence base Rachel mentioned for a particular program, can I just ask if that is based on trials in specifically neurodivergent populations? I don't know the specific population. I know it's well established in education and the NHS. I can't specifically give you information around the specific client base. I do know that art therapy overall has demonstrated that self-regulation, better concentration in classrooms, better parent-teacher relationships, better client relationships overall, whether or not it's being classified specifically for neurodiversity, the data shows that overall people function much better after having art therapy in terms of regulation and all the things that neurodivergent people would really struggle with. concentration maybe and relational issues definitely improve. We don't tend to label too much in art therapy. We use labels in terms of helping people to access services, but we see people beyond the label. We see you as an individual. The label's information for us. And the way I see things, the brain is plastic and we can develop and skill up within things. What we may present with can evolve into something else. Labels are really helpful, but they also can be quite reductive in terms of making somebody be, this is the way I am and therefore I can't change. Whereas with the models that we work, we use that diagnosis to understand, but then we also work with you as an individual beyond the label. I hope that makes sense. So in terms of the research, I'm sure if I could find some, there's probably some specific for neurodiversity, but we know that art therapy works for everybody.
Yeah, there's some studies that I found when I was doing some of this as well. I don't know if they are specifically randomized control groups, but there's been reviews by PMC, which analyzed 80 studies have found that autism spectrum disorder represented 72% of research in art and music therapy for different disorders. They concluded that art therapy and music therapy have significant impact on behavior, communication, social, cognitive, and emotional skills in different populations. So there's loads of studies out there, definitely. That control study piece, though, might not necessarily be there easy to find, but there is loads around.
There's lots, yeah.
Yeah, I want to say Henley, 2018, Martin, 2009. There's a piece around art therapy and autism specifically, and this talk about ADHD. Okay, fantastic. Awesome. Next question. What barriers, whether they're internal or external, have prevented you from exploring creative expression? Feel free to share in a few words. While you do that, Rachel, when you see clients, what are some of the things that have stopped them from exploring creative expression in the past?
Oh, that's a big one, isn't it? That's why I developed the art school that I built. I was very sad because my children are neurodiverse and I had to homeschool them for a few years because of educational trauma and lots of different reasons. What I witnessed was how powerful creativity and play were in the method that I used in homeschool and how they flourished in that. Now, when I looked at the school system, it definitely, for me, spoke volumes about what we are doing to our children in terms of allowing them to be expressive. I believe fundamentally that we are all creative individuals, but I also know it's a muscle that needs to be exercised. NASA in America did a massive study and they showed that children under the age of 5, 98% of them were all creative geniuses. These same children were then later assessed as adults and only 2% remained creative geniuses. Now, one can only ask what happens between 5 and adulthood that could diminish that. For me, I don't think it's whether or not somebody's creative, it's what happened to you that meant that you're not anymore, because it's a muscle. I do think what can inhibit it is what we're taught about ourselves, what we're taught about creativity, the lifestyle. I think culturally, we're very less brain orientated, which is logic, thinking, rational, analytical. There's nothing wrong with that either. It's just if that's all we're doing and your creative mind's on the right side of the brain, which is more your emotions, your imagination, your memories, that kind of thing. I think it's self-belief and access to it as well.
Yeah, Susan said that, yes, task initiation is a very related barrier because some of this pieces that people have actually shared as well, right? Not knowing where to start. And that's been the task initiation challenge. Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing as well. Being overwhelmed by the options and not feeling drawn by anyone in particular, processing difficulties, perfectionism, and that's exhaustive sometimes, and overwhelm and too messy. So it's that internal dialogue that we also have replaying from maybe external people. Wendy also agrees, self-belief. I came to the point where I don't feel I'm good at anything anymore.
You just need to find people we can help. It's in there. Sometimes it's just finding the language and the material you love to work with. Yeah, but I think art's quite difficult, isn't it? Because it's open for judgment. And when someone looks at it, they'll either go, oh, that's good or that's bad. That might be even ourselves judging ourselves harshly. I think it's learning that it's not about what it looks like, it's about what it's telling us. I think it's learning to read imagery. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but you won't go, oh, that's a good book just by looking at it. They do say, don't judge a book by its cover. It's the same with imagery. It might be a really rubbish piece of art to somebody, but if you look closely and learn to read what the image is really saying, maybe there's a hidden message, something that speaks to you. Someone might go, Jackson Pollock's rubbish, the guy that splatters everything. But to someone else, they go, oh, that's beautiful. I love it.
Both subjective, but it's that acceptance of self as well. We asked enough question. How does sensory experience affect your relationship with creativity? Some people said that art materials can be overwhelming. Sometimes it actually helps them feel grounded. Some people say they need specific materials or conditions to feel comfortable. And some people haven't even thought about this connection. They haven't thought about how, if I'm touching a paintbrush, for example, in the wood, quite rough, it's going to make me want to continue using that piece of material, sensory-wise, and it's going to really impact the way that I interact with that piece of art.
That's so important, because what one person experiences with one art material will be so different to another person. Going back to the nervous system, especially if people have had bad experiences in their life, this is why the art's so powerful, because it's not just about what it looks like, it's about how it feels. I've seen people being so activated by clay. Clay's slimy. For some people, it's disgusting. We call that a low disgust level of tolerance. And we call it also the felt sense. That's something as art therapists we're very aware of. We're constantly mindful and observing the client and the person, just how are they responding to the art material. I noticed that those that are more on the autistic spectrum, and this is not diagnosis at all, tend to lean to leaner, drier materials like felt tips that they control, whereas people who've got more calmer, complex emotions love to create mess and get the paint and get it exploding everywhere. You can really tell by the choice of materials that people take which sort of direction it's going towards. It's information. It's not diagnostic. It's just information, like data points. But definitely a good art therapist will be looking at how you're responding to texture, sound, and how it feels for that person.
Fantastic. Chris just said, I shy away from tactile arts for fear of creating a mess. So go back to your point, right? And yet I love incorporating sensory details in my writing.
It is. And I think that's the information that you're saying. I shy away from tactile arts for fear of creating a mess. You've just answered your question there, haven't you? You've got a fear of making a mess. And then the art therapist will be going, I wonder where that came from. What were you told about mess growing up? Was mess a bad thing in your life? That's where you go exploring. We won't unpack that here, obviously, but what you're telling me already is that mess is the information we need to focus on. It's not that mess is bad or wrong. It's just, what does mess mean to you?
Louise has also shared about wanting to try watercolours. And again, so many options maybe.
Yeah, brushes are like, oh my gosh, I love brushes. I can go into an art shop and I can sit, and you can spend a lot of money on a brush. You can spend up to £100 on a brush, go figure. But I've got some here. The watercolours, you want really nice soft brushes. I think if you go for the De La Rowney range, they're quite good, but a nice flat brush that's soft is really good for washes. Then you want the tiny brushes for detail work, but you want a range. But I really would spend a bit of money on a brush. Don't go for the cheap, because they're not going to be fun to use and they're going to shed loads of hair. So go for a decent brush. The De La Rowney brushes are really nice. If you've not got much money, they do a graduate range.
Love that. See, Rachel knows the arts. Okay. Anyway, I talked about sensory pieces again, and it's the strong smells causes headaches, allergic reactions, like sneezing and itching.
Cause headaches. We need to know that before we got started. That's why art therapists are trained to do what we call a clinical assessment, where we would ask you lots and lots of questions around what you like, any sort of medical history, family history, and we'd gather all that information, and we would need to know ahead what kind of materials would be activating for you emotionally, or if you've got any health concerns. We generally don't use anything that's got toxins in, purely just to keep it safer. Unless we did a risk assessment, we probably wouldn't use things like spray paint, which are obviously quite toxic, or varnishes. We often just use poster paint, non-toxic materials, because it's not really about making something to go in an art gallery. It's more about using the material to communicate something. But it would be really key information if anybody had any allergies or health issues around certain materials.
I can see that sensory plays a big part of this. And again, and really good art therapists, you'll be able to reduce those barriers that come up. What would you say to a neurodivergent person who thinks I'm not creative or art isn't for me? Rachel, while people answer this and hopefully say some encouraging words or something, what would you be saying?
What would I say to someone who says they're not creative? If I had £1 for every time someone told me that, I'd be a billionaire. What would I say? I would be curious. I'd go, I wonder why you think that. Who told you weren't creative? I'd also say, if you are not an athlete, does that mean you don't exercise? Because creativity is a muscle. And that's the problem. We're told we're either creative or we're not creative. I just would challenge that. But at the end of the day, somebody wants to choose to believe they're not creative. I'm not going to argue. I might argue a little bit, but I might go, fair enough. That's your choice at the end of the day. It's not for me to convince you otherwise. But I'd always encourage them. I just challenge their point of view a little bit gently and just say, you sure? I wonder where you got that from.
Love that. Earlier on, Rachel said the art therapist will challenge you, but they're not going to convince you or challenge you. I love that response of not going to be there sitting down telling you all of this stuff. But what I also loved from the community, they said, if somebody said who's neurodivergent, I'm not creative or artist, I mean, they'll say, let's try it. Everyone is an artist. It's more about being yourself, expressing how you feel. Give it a go anyway. I would say, I think perhaps you haven't found your medium yet. Art can be spoken words. All of these, everyone that has said in the comments before, I've stopped creating art or I've stopped using art as an outlet for self-expression, own it. Take all of that, bring it in, embody it, because those are words from your own community saying, go ahead. Permission you never needed, it's right there.
Exactly. I think there is a lot of fear as well, isn't there? People have talked about that overwhelming fear of not knowing where to get started. I think that is when it is important to differentiate between an art therapist and an art class. An art therapist isn't there to teach you art, but we will teach you how to use the material if you're struggling, compared to going to an art class where you're going to learn techniques, you're going to look at artists, you're going to look at lots of different things. That's art for well-being. Art therapy is different. It's because it's not really about encouraging your creativity. We already know it's in there. It's more of a language. We're psychodynamic, we're attachment-based and informed. We work with neurochemistry. So it's not really about coming to get into your art zone. But as a therapist, I always give people the option to develop this creativity as a lifestyle outside of the therapy room. They also develop something called the clever technique, which stands for C, is to create something every day, even if that's just taking a photo on your phone, cooking the dinner from scratch. Part of the clever technique I found, especially working with the communities, that after 2 weeks, if they use the clever technique, which involves going outside, looking at the sky, which increases your serotonin, taking vitamin D supplements, especially during the winter, exercise is really important. I always say if you're moving your body as well, contracting your muscles brings serotonin into your bloodstream. Did you know that your muscles are holding all the neurotransmitters you need for good brain health? The R at the end of clever means being grateful, gratitude. Remember 3 things a day to be grateful for. This has been proven scientifically. If you're being thankful, you can't worry at the same time. That sounds a bit cliche, being thankful. And some of us don't have a lot to be thankful for, but sometimes it can be just as simple as I'm just thankful for the air that I breathe or the chair that I sit in. It's just coming back to that space of I've got a roof over my head, I've got food over on my table, the simple things. By incorporating creativity in a daily practice and simplifying it to something you probably do already. Everyone takes photos on their phone generally.
Yeah.
We bring it down to the basics where you're comfortable, and then we slowly build up on that. Art journaling, that is something we move into the practice, but it is quite different to an art class, which would really create your creativity further.
Yeah, this is about emotional well-being. And so the learning mindset piece comes into it a lot, just like Chris has said. And it's freeing, right? It takes a ton of weight off when it's actually about emotional well-being. The outcome is awesome. The clever technique, I didn't get all of them, but it's create something every day. Go outside, look at the sky, exercise, be grateful. If you want the full shebang, you need to go on to ColourMeIn Wellbeing.
Yeah, I can definitely give you the information. Clever is create, line, exercise, vitamin D, engage with other people, look somebody in the eye and say hi. I know that's scary, right? R stands remember to be grateful and smile, even if you don't feel like it. Smiling releases positive chemicals. And so it's just simple things. But yes, it's all about well-being and not productivity, which we've all been trained to become producers, haven't we? But it's coming back to basics.
Amazing. Okay, go back on that art therapy piece. Another question is around the benefits. If you're going to try art therapy, in order to feel what's most important to you, rank these: processing difficult emotions safely, expressing yourself without words, building self-awareness. Got a whole list there. Rank it. If none of those resonate with you, then use the chat. It's going to make much more sense and it might help. Again, art therapy, not necessarily art class. The focus is art therapy. While you're doing that, while you're voting and ranking, I'm going to go to a few previous comments to make sure that I'm merging as much as you as possible.
I'm autistic and never related preventing mess with procrastinating starting painting. So is that you saying that you think that you don't start painting because you're worried about making a mess?
Yeah, that was related to the other comments.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the relationship with mess, if you notice that word keeps coming up, mess. Life is messy and we spend a lot of our time trying to tidy up and avoiding mess because we've been trained. Maybe we had a strict parent or in school, or we had something that happened where we were told mess is bad at a young age. If you make a mess, it's, oh no, you've made a mess. We all do it. It's not that I'm judging anybody. And some of us are more mess averse than others. I'm very messy. I'm constantly leaving a trail of evidence of my life behind me. I really admire those that are very tidy because I find it really hard to be tidy. But I think mess is the key. It's your relationship with mess that's really important. What does making a mess mean to you? What does it do to your nervous system? I can tell you something. If I mention things like glitter, especially to certain people, their anxiety levels will go through the roof. If you think about glitter, it's not dangerous, really. It's annoying. It gets into everything and you can never get rid of it. But in the whole scheme of life, our brains have become so fearful of something so small. I think the reason why art therapy is so powerful is because we can use the materials to inform us about how we feel about life. I think mess is about life. How do you cope when life gets messy? I think that's what the art materials will tell you. If you're frightened of making a mess, the mess is telling you how do you cope when life gets tricky and messy and we can't control it. It gets uncontrollable.
Love that. It sounds like a challenge as well. We've all ranked finding calm and reducing anxiety as your top thing when it comes to art therapy. How common is that people do want to feel calm and reduce anxiety when they come to you, Rachel?
It really does depend because often when you start art therapy, because it is therapy, it can actually make you feel worse to begin with because we are activating the nervous system. If your nervous system's been suppressed for a long time and you've been keeping everything under the hood, masking, doing whatever you need to do to control, and we're starting to go into a space where we're letting go of that, can you imagine what's that going to feel like? We do it in a contained way. And I always make sure with my clients that I help with self-regulation and like using the things like Clever, that we get these lifestyle techniques embedded before we start opening Pandora's box, so to speak, because we need you to be able to cope with what may be coming. But if you can be committed to the process and listen to the options that you have in front of you and take those on board, then absolutely people come out calmer. I think even just being with somebody that's compassionate and willing to listen to you in a non-judgmental way and gives you autonomy and choice is very empowering and it's very calming for people. But I don't want to give people the false impression that art therapy is all about feeling good, because really therapy is hard work. It's about process and process is hard.
Art therapy. Just a little snippet.
I can't do art therapy today because art therapy is a contained clinical space where we would need to do an assessment and have confidentiality contract and all that kind of thing. But what I can do is a wellbeing exercise. If you've got a pen and a paper or whatever you choose to use, there's a little exercise you can do where if you want to set a little timer for a minute, and just come into a space where you can focus on your breath. If you're comfortable, some people really don't like focusing on their breath. It's quite triggering. If this isn't for you, don't do it. But you're going to use your pen and a piece of paper. If you've got a larger sheet, that's fantastic. As you're breathing, move the pen. And as you breathe out, move the pen in a different direction. And just keep flowing around with the pen. So as you breathe in, up you go. As you breathe out, you can go from left to right, right to left, diagonally. There can be all sorts of directions you can go in just for a minute and just see what the image shows you at the end. You can close your eyes while you do it if you want to, or keep them open. That's entirely up to you. I hope that sounds easy enough. Has anyone got any questions?
What are the different ways that people can actually access?
Basically, art therapy is in the NHS and in some schools, but is it easy to get hold of? Not really, but you might be really lucky and be offered it if you are in CAMS or under some mental health department. They may offer it to you. If your school has an art therapist, they may offer you that. Otherwise, it's finding an art therapist in your local area. You can go onto the British Association of Art Therapists. They'll have a list of art therapists there. Really important that you make sure that the art therapist is registered with the HCPC, which is a healthcare professional council. Just because somebody says they're an art therapist doesn't mean to say they are. It's actually illegal to call yourself an art therapist if you're not registered. Really important because it's all about safety. But yeah, the British Association of Art Therapists would be your first point of call to find an art therapist. What should they look for in an art therapist? Like I said, registration. Always have a chat with them. The art therapist should be willing to have a free 20-minute conversation with you. They should always be putting your needs first. So it's never about the therapist. We need to have boundaries and safety, but they should always be respecting what you need and listening to your voice. I think that's crucial. Clients should always have a voice. They should always feel free to feedback and never feel coerced into anything. Everything needs to be their choice.
Fantastic. Obviously, you can get through the NHS depending on the borough as well. For you then, Rachel, if we're going to use people wanting to utilize you privately or through other networks, how could they do that today?
They could go on my website, which is ColourMeIn If you go onto therapy services, depending on your age, there's an under 18 form and there's an over 18 form. You can fill that in as an inquiry. I can do online and I can do in person. I much prefer in person. I think you get a much better experience, but we can do it online. For some people, online is more preferable because being face to face can be quite confronting for some people. But yeah, you can go on the website. I'm on the British Association of Art Therapists. I'm in the North London area in Hertfordshire, in the St Albans area, if that works for you. If you've got an organisation that wants us to come in, we can also come into your organisation and we can do art therapy there, or we can do psychoeducation talks. We can do something called reflective practice. If you don't want therapy, it's a bit like coaching, but it's a bit deeper than coaching. I'm trained as a supervisor in reflective practice, so you just come once a month. We don't do deep work, but we just talk about your work issues. If you want to bring your work or things that you're experiencing in your work to an art therapy space, we can do what we call reflective practice. And we talk about that, which isn't therapy, but it just helps you process your work, especially if you find certain things in your work overwhelming. That's once a month. That again can be done online or in person or in your workspace. In fact.
Amazing. We'll put Rachel's details on the different networks so that you can contact easily. But now I want you to answer one of the last questions, right? What is the one insight about art therapy in your own neurodivergent experience that you want to remember from today's session?
I'm loving mess is fine. Yes, let's get comfortable with mess. Yeah, I think obviously within reason, but if we can learn to be comfortable about mess making in a contained space, I think absolutely that's the way forward. That's how we train our brains to be okay with uncertainty.
Lots of people have said self-regulation, embrace the message, doesn't have to be bad, laugh out loud. Correlations between art and doing art and my autism, ADHD, and some behaviors of mine. So far, we have got a few great insights from people. Thank you so much all for sharing that. But also, if you've got any questions, put them here and we will give them to Rachel and then you will be able to get those answered as well. But Rachel, if you was going to say something to the audience who are neurodivergent and probably haven't encountered art therapy before, what would be some of your 3 tips around embracing that new environment?
Yeah, find somebody that you feel comfortable working with, that they understand neurodiversity. Some art therapists use what we call a bit of an older model where they sit and let you decide and sit in silence. I think the newer trained art therapists are moving more towards working what we call alongside the client, where we play with them, we create with them. We're very focused on the therapeutic alliance and the relationship. That's what I would lean towards. Ask the therapist, what model of practice do you use? Do you work alongside with me or do you just sit and watch me? I think for neurodiversity, everyone's different. I think working alongside, we use what we call a client intuitive approach. Some people would say, I don't know where to start. And I totally get that. I would help them. I'd say, here's some options. Even if they're still stuck, I would start to lead the way and sense where they need to go. Whereas some therapists would just sit in silence and hope that the anxiety would stir you enough into action, which will be very overwhelming for a neurodivergent person. So it's looking at their approach. How would you work with me? How would you help me get to my inner self and feel safe? How would you help me feel safe? That'd be a really good question to ask a therapist.
How would you help me feel safe? That's a really good one. Messy is the word of the day, Rachel.
I think so.
Like I said, you can have contained messiness so that you know what area you got permission to be messy with. Again, go to ColourMeIn Wellbeing, their website, and connect with Rachel. You might be able to get a consultation before you start that will help you understand how you can feel safe in this space. I'm also going to send Rachel's details via those who are registered via email as well. Thank you all. I'm just going to go to the last message. Try group art therapy where the therapist sat and watched. I didn't return because I didn't appear interactive for me. Again, different styles, right? Understanding what you need.
That's a good therapist. If they can work with you and find out what you need, that's a good therapist. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel, for today, your time, your energy, and everyone else in the community for sharing their own experiences as well. May you all access some form of art therapy. Go into ColourMeIn Wellbeing and check out what they offer, but also take some of these insights from today and see where you are in your journey so that you can continue with your own emotional wellbeing journey. Thanks all. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Indigo.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Chris.